Hey guys, welcome back to the Max Spence Business Podcast. Before I get into today's guest, if you can please like, subscribe, leave a review. It helps out a ton with the podcast and also the people that are coming on the show. So today's guest is Brad Cartier. So he's a real estate investor specializing in small multifamily developments. He's also the head of marketing at Hostfully and a contributor on many platforms. It's great to have you on the show today, Brad.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Max. Looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome, awesome. So why don't we jump off, why don't we start with, for people that maybe haven't come across any of your content or know who you are, where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? And what was your first passion?
So great questions. I grew up in Kingston, Ontario. Quickly grew a passion for entrepreneurship. One of my first things that I dabbled in was when I was in elementary school. I raffled off some marbles, and the local newspaper took notice of that, and they wrote a story about it. So I've always had that entrepreneurial gene in me. And yeah, so I left Kingston as a teenager to go to university. Joined the military as well, which started my government life. I haven't left Ottawa since, but traveled quite a bit and been posted in different places. And the first real thing that got me onto real estate was my first investment property with a business partner of mine, who's still my partner at our current development company. We bought a terrace home in Orleans. It was probably the scariest thing I've ever done, and in retrospect, it's with what we're doing now. It's more small potatoes, but yeah, that just that experience. I mean, it was a terrible investment, and I'm happy to get into that. But we didn't know really what we were doing, so we sort of fumbled through our first real estate investment, and yeah, just developed a passion for real estate for a number of different reasons that I'm happy to get into. But yeah, that sort of set off the trajectory of the real estate passion, which has translated into some property technology consultancy that I currently do, and some other passion projects that I'm currently working on.
Yeah. I'm actually really excited to get into all that today. So let's sort of starting from the beginning. So you're born in Kingston, you sell marbles, as as a kid, and that sort of starts your entrepreneurial journey. And then pretty much you go to university, then you get a job in the military. I see that you worked at CSIS for a bit. For people that don't know what CSIS is, it's pretty much like the Canadian version of like the CIA type stuff, which is pretty cool. So I see that you worked there for almost a decade, and then you made that transfer into buying that first property. How long into working at CSIS when you considered buying that first property?
It was only a couple of years, actually. I worked quite a bit in overseas and domestically, so I traveled quite a bit in my job with CSIS. And just to correct you, we are similar to we are similar to the CIA. However, there's some significant differences between a domestic security service and a foreign one. But that's a topic we could talk about later. It doesn't really have to do with entrepreneurship, but it's still an interesting discussion because there is quite a bit of a distinction between the two organizations. But yeah, so I spent a lot of time. I was intelligence officer. I started out in counterintelligence for 3 years here in Ottawa, and then domestic counterterrorism in Montreal for another 3 years, so away from the family. And then my last 4 years was international counterterrorism. So a lot of time on planes and hotels and all that kind of stuff. So I had fortunately had a bit of time to do that side hustle that was real estate. But it was only a couple of years into my tenure at CSIS that I bought my first rental property. So it sort of happened concurrently with that previous career.
Ah, okay. And yeah. To talk about CSIS a little bit. Yeah, sorry, I thought they were very similar to like the CIA. So the CIA is more like they're foreign, right? And then CSIS is domestic, like watching around Canada and stuff. So what's Canada's like? What's like the version of the Canadian like CIA? Just for more context.
Yeah, so I mean CSIS would be the closest thing. I mean CIA and CSIS are similar in that they're human intelligence services. So mostly dealing with human sources, running them against the threats, whether it's counterintelligence, counterterrorism, counterproliferation. But the big difference between CSIS and the CIA is the CIA collects foreign intelligence as well as security intelligence, and that's a huge distinction. So the mandate for CSIS is strictly security intelligence, so we wouldn't go collect on foreign leaders, or unless it directly affects our national security, and that has specific criteria, and it's mainly just counterterrorism and counterintelligence. So if someone's spying on us, then we look at it. If someone's planning an attack on our citizens at home or abroad, then we can look at it. Whereas the CIA, they look at that as well, but they also do the foreign intelligence component. So that component of the Canadian intelligence mandate is done by CSE, the Communication Security Establishment. I think that's still their acronym, but they're actually located directly next to us in Ottawa. So we work very closely with them, but CSE would be the Canadian equivalent of the NSA, so all signals intelligence, and then CSIS does the human component of that and boots on the ground.
Ah, okay, yeah. That's the really interesting thing, is because like in Canada, like I know like the CIA and all that type of stuff is so more like dramatized in like the US, whereas Canada, you don't really like, you really don't really hear anything about like the Canadians, like, intelligence or anything like that, or counterterrorism units at all. It's like super secretive. So it's like, so it's actually really interesting to hear about that, a little bit about that, like what's happening in Canada and stuff, and our protection and stuff. But to sort of now jump into going into the real estate stuff. So you get that first property, and like how did you figure out about this property? Like, why did you decide to buy this over everything else? And what sort of happened with it?
Yeah, so I mean, I started thinking about real estate a few years prior to that first purchase, and I mentioned a business partner of mine. We sort of partnered up and said, you know what, let's take the dive. So we looked at different markets in Ottawa. Really didn't know much about doing market analysis, and really just stumbled upon this property at the time. The Orleans real estate market was affordable. So we decided to purchase this relatively new 2-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom terrace home, sort of walk up type scenario. And really the criteria for us was just price point. And after we purchased it, we were cash flowing about $50 a month, which gets eaten away pretty quickly when you do maintenance and inflation and cost adjustments and variable interest rates and all that kind of stuff. So fairly quickly it was underwater. It wasn't not by a lot of, it wasn't a huge money suck, but we definitely learned a lot from that experience, and actually held on to it for quite a long time. We just sold it a couple of months ago. Because it was such an easy, because it was brand new, it was pretty easy on the maintenance side. We had the same tenant in there, not from day one, but pretty close to, she was in there and is still in there, and another investor bought it. She was with us for like 8 years. So it was a pretty easy hands-off investment, but in terms of like ROI and cap rates and cash flow, all those important metrics that investors should be looking at, it really wasn't the best thing to do, but in retrospect, it was the best thing to do because it gave us that education, and you learn by doing, right? We didn't get stuck in analysis paralysis and, just running numbers and not pulling the trigger. We pulled the trigger and adjusted as we went. And it really set the foundation for what came later.
Yeah, 100%. Like that's the biggest thing, is literally just like doing the execution over everything else, right? It's like, because you like, even though you can do all the research you can, and like do all the theory, like you may have theories or what, but it's not really proven until like you buy that first property, you sell that first product, right?
Yeah.
So after that, what came after that? So you held on to it for 8 years. What was your sort of thinking? You're like, okay, so this property wasn't like the best investment, but it did get us started into the real estate world. So what did you do after that? Did you go, just start buying, like, did you buy another single family house? Did you buy like a duplex? Did you decide that you want to go into development? How did that sort of evolve?
Yeah. So phase 2 of sort of the investing journey was a move to new build condos. And then that translated into some duplex, small multifamily, and now the full blown real estate development company. But we transitioned very quickly to new condos for a number of different reasons. primarily because it was very low maintenance. And we were also able to take advantage of some tax rebates on new construction, the HST rebate, which decreased the amount of money that we kept in the deal, and we could rinse and repeat kind of thing. So after that, we did some condo investing in Ottawa and Montreal. I had been stationed to Montreal at the time, so I had some time while I was there during weekdays and coming home on weekends. So we bought a bunch of new build condos in the Montreal area. We still have a couple of those because they were fantastic investments for a number of different reasons. But we took what we learned from choosing the wrong market on our first one to really that. I mean, aside from some of our current developments, we chose the best market in Montreal. I'm happy to get into that, but we really got in at the ground floor of gentrification in a particular area, and just held on to the assets for several years through that construction period. That was, it's painful when you're living through all that, but once it's all done, then you get a huge boost in equity. So we've sold a couple of them, but we still have a couple, 3 condos in Montreal.
Oh, okay. And like you were saying, like the Montreal was the best market at the time. How did you figure that out?
Yeah, so not necessarily Montreal. I mean, real estate investing, as you know, is a very localized business. So it's hard to make generalizations about a city. It's very, very neighborhood dependent. So we deliberately chose a particular neighborhood called Griffintown. Anyone who's familiar with Montreal knows that area. It's next to the Bell Center. It's right in between the Bell Center and the water. So, reading up on the different neighborhoods, there was already some quite established neighborhoods in the Montreal market that were expensive, so overpriced in our eyes. And then some other areas that were, underpriced, but the neighborhood trajectory didn't look that great. Sort of the path of progress wasn't heading there. So we chose Griffintown. Up until the 70s, it was an industrial hub right on the water. And then from the 70s up until, early 2000s, it was just a wasteland. Industry left. It turned into a big drug haven. Almost every building in there was vacant or needed to be demoed. And then a savvy condo developer came in and scooped up a lot of the land because they saw the long term vision of that area. It was just so centrally located in between Atwater Market and the Old Port, and 10-minute walk to St. Catherine Street. So that history and that framework of and vision for that area is really what drove us there, and really it sort of solidified how we look at neighborhoods and areas and how we choose markets. And it's not just a price point. It's not just a now looking at what the market looks like now, but what can it look like, and what's the path of progress looking like 10, 20, 30 years. Because for better or worse, I'm definitely consider myself a buy and hold investor. So I want to be holding on to assets for the long term, because that's when you get the long-term appreciation and the mortgage pay down. And there's just so many benefits to buy and hold. So I want to make sure that 20 years from now, I'm not going to be holding an asset that is, not in a good area.
Yeah, 100%. So now sort of talking about the small, like the multifamily developments that you're doing, can you actually talk about one of the developments that you did recently and sort of like take us through sort of the process of like how you found that deal? Was it off market? Was it through like a realtor or like, a commercial realtor or something like that? And just sort of take us through the steps a bit.
Yeah, for sure. So we just finished a 16 unit in Embrun, which is a market just south of Ottawa. It's about 15 minutes from the city center. We moved into Embrun and Russell prior to the big Amazon distribution center going in that area, the 1 million square foot distribution center, because we like the area. The added bonus of having that huge anchor employer definitely further solidified our thesis about the area. So anyway, the inward migration really made sense to us in that area. It was very close to Ottawa. The price points were low from a real estate development perspective. Our land acquisition costs are much lower. But the rents in those small secondary and tertiary markets are still relatively similar to Ottawa and almost on par when you consider that we're building new, and that there's no rental supply in these smaller markets. And the rental supply that's there is old, it's tired. So for all those reasons, we decided to move into the smaller real estate markets. And again, this was pre-COVID, and COVID just accelerated the move out from the city. So we're really tripling down on these secondary and tertiary markets. But the 16 unit that we developed with the partnership with a local builder, the builder came on as a partner in the project with us. He had the land originally, so we negotiated a price at the time that we felt was fair. We like to involve the builder. We work with a select few builders that we trust and we know and we've worked with in the past to make them partners in the project. It's not mandatory. We've done projects where we don't involve the builder, but we really like to have them on side with us, and it gives them a bit of a diversification too, outside of just their construction companies. So anyway, we partnered with the builder, got a really good price. And construction started, I think about a year ago now. Obviously COVID messed everything up, but we were, mostly due to the builder just crushing it. We brought that to the finish line. We took possession. Well, we welcomed our first guest in August, and because it was a new construction and we were able to keep costs low despite the supply chain issues and lumber increasing dramatically, we were able to refinance the property upon completion as well into a long-term CMHC loan, which is what we try and do for the most part. So we acquire, underutilized or land that is not highest and best use. We'll partner with the builder to build, not necessarily at cost, but definitely lower than what you'd get from a traditional resale. And then we do a refinance on the back end to give some capital back to investors, ourselves, and the builder.
Oh, okay. And yeah, that was a lot of information there. So to sort of break that down a bit and jump into that.
Yep.
You mentioned, just starting off, you mentioned second and third markets. What do you mean by that for somebody who's listening, and is maybe wanting to buy their first rental property? A first market would be Ottawa, the city area. What would be a second or third market that you're talking about?
Yeah. So, I mean, I talk to a lot of new investors who are buying their first property, and one of my big pieces of advice is to look at those secondary and tertiary markets. There's hundreds of them within 200 kilometers. They're all those markets that are, 5,000 to, 25,000 in population, that have an anchor employer or are commuter towns into Ottawa. Think Rockland, think Embrun, think Russell, think Carleton Place, Arnprior, all those smaller, Smiths Falls, the list goes on and on and on. And the real benefit to those markets, as long as there's positive inward migration, is that the cost of acquisition is much lower and it's easier. You're not fighting with sophisticated real estate teams that are trying to redevelop areas in the Glebe or Mechanicsville or these really higher end neighborhoods where competition is quite high, acquisition costs are quite high, labor costs are quite high. If you do something in one of these smaller markets, then things just get easier for you. It's not to say that investing in the city center is the wrong thing to do. I mean, that's just not our mission, our motto. But for the most part, the reason that there's dozens of reasons why we like these smaller markets, but the main one is that vacancy rates are almost zero because there is no supply. And with the cost of purchasing a home rising across North America, not just in the Ottawa area, more people are renting. And people in these markets, in these areas, because the staple employer in Ottawa is the government as well as high tech. it's a demographic with money, and they're willing to rent something, but they want it to be nice. So a new build duplex in a secondary market around Ottawa, that's the sweet spot for a beginner investor to look at, and new build as well, because you get the Terry on warranty, you can get an HST rebate. There's a number of reasons that the new build small multifamily makes sense, and that's how we started. We started with a duplex, then a fourplex, and like I mentioned, we just did a 16 unit, and we have a number of other developments in the works, but they're all around that same thesis of smaller markets and small multifamily.
Oh, okay, awesome, awesome. And with that 16 unit, was it like townhouses, or was it just like one big, like 16 unit building?
Yeah, so we it was two blocks of 6 units and then a row of 4 townhomes. And that's a really good point, Max. We like those. Once you get above a certain threshold of unit count, then the building code changes. You need things like elevators. It adds a huge level of complexity to your development. And it's not, again, not to say that that's the wrong thing to do. However, from an exit strategy standpoint, I would rather have 2 blocks of 6 unit, 2-bedroom apartments in a row of 4 townhomes and a 16 unit 4 or 5-story apartment building, because if when I want to sell, the buyer pool of that 16 unit just apartment 5-story apartment is going to be a lot smaller than the buyer pool for all those other units. And you can even chop them up in a couple of years. If we wanted to sell a townhome, we could. If we wanted to sell the townhomes as a block, we could. If we wanted to condominiumize the blocks of 6 units, we could. It just improves your exit strategies dramatically by focusing on what's called those missing middle multifamily units, which is sort of the duplex up to 10 units kind of thing.
Oh, okay, okay. And is that sort of like your bread and butter, you would say? Like, is that like a system that you've sort of built, that you sort of just like you go into these second or third markets, and this is the sort of layout that you guys design a lot, or do you guys mix it up a bit, or like do different stuff, or is it just like the same product?
Yeah, definitely the same product. We want to be specialists in one thing and not stretch ourselves too thin. So really,
Hmm.
missing middle multifamily in the secondary and tertiary markets is our bread and butter, and that's what we're focusing on.
Ah, okay, okay. And you talked about that you started this project when COVID happened. Can you actually take us a little bit through that? Like, how did you guys figure out how to? Because like I know when COVID happened, it sort of like there was like 4 months where everything just stopped. It was just like halted. Everything was halted. It was just like, and another thing too. Like I know you mentioned it briefly. Was getting supplies, which was huge, which was really really hard to get supplies in, right? So how did you guys sort of overcome that?
Yeah. Well, we had no choice but to overcome it. As all entrepreneurs know, and this, Max, that figuratively speaking, we get punched in the face a lot, and we just have to keep bouncing back. You don't really have a choice. You keep moving forward. So this was a situation of that. But the challenges were around. So on the residential development side, that was allowed to continue in the third lockdown because it was deemed essential. So we were allowed to continue to develop. However, there was significant restrictions on your contractors that were allowed in, and how many, and the subtrades and all that kind of stuff, in addition to the supply chain issues that we had. And I mean, we had some labor. Well, we had lots of labor shortages, which delayed the project. Me being a little too proactive, I signed leases for all 16 units a little too early. So we had to push back actually the move-in date for 16 families, which was very difficult conversations to have when you're moving or selling a house. It's so challenging. So that was definitely a huge lesson learned for us, that just to be patient and make sure 100% that we're good for the day of move-in, and give ourselves a significant buffer. Yeah, and on the supply chain thing, like there's stuff we can't control. So there's still some trim that is missing in a couple of the units. Getting appliances, they were ordered in February, and by August we still didn't have even some of the ovens. So we had to go out and buy some toaster ovens on the table. We had to go buy like 12 of those and go put them in the apartment. So Yeah, it was quite a big challenge on the residential side. We have some other projects on the commercial side where we just had to stop because it wasn't deemed essential. But again, you got to roll with it, and we didn't really have a choice. Everyone was in the same boat. So thankfully, on the tenant on the tenant side, they were super understanding. We were understanding with the builder. We weren't mad at him when things were delayed. It's just about everyone being on the same page and rolling with it.
Yeah, 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 100%. So with the commercial properties that you talked about there, what happened with that, with just like the stalemate that happened, right? Like with, like, if you had a mortgage or something, like did the government help out? Did like the bank sort of, you know, um, like give you guys a little bit of like slack room to be like, hey, like defer it or something?
Yeah. So when I say commercial, we don't own any like retail stores or like businesses that operate in commercial properties like strip malls and stuff like that. We were actually doing a commercial development just south of Rockland, where I live. We're doing a 62-acre eco resort.
Oh,
So
okay, yeah.
that was technically considered commercial construction. So we actually had to stop all construction there, but we did an interesting pivot that I'm happy to talk about. But yeah, the commercial side of things, again, why we really love residential real estate is because a lot of landlords were hurting on the commercial side, and I totally feel for them. And a lot of people went out of business and lost a lot of savings. So and that's why I don't really understand the commercial side too well, so I can't really comment on it. But that's why we really try to focus on residential only. We're doing some developments now that have a component of commercial but aren't strictly commercial. So we will have some exposure to that, but mainly it's just on the residential side.
Oh, okay, okay. And yeah, the commercial property that you're talking about is the 62 acres. Do you want to talk about that some more? I'm actually interested to hear about that.
Yeah, for sure. So we are myself and two other partners are developing a project called Hammond Hill. I'm much more behind the scenes than they are. We have a builder partner who's been doing all the on the ground work, and so for the past, I think, probably 10 months is really when the work actually started. But we've been thinking about this project for about over a year now. So yeah, it's called Hammond Hill. It's next to the Hammond Golf and Country Club and Broken Stick Brewery. It's 62 acres of just over 200 acres. It includes the golf course, the restaurant, and the brewery. And we're putting in cabins, we're putting in yurt sites, we're putting in campsites. We have a licensed beer garden on site. We have a whole bunch of amenities, building a lake. We have a trail system that we've developed. We have outdoor yoga retreat areas. We have event spaces for weddings, big parking lot, and for a number of different reasons, we decided to really double down on environmental sustainability. So it's completely off the grid. Most of the wood we use for our constructions is from on site. All of our trails are mulched with wood from on site. And there's a whole number of other environmentally sustainable practices that we're doing. So yeah, we're calling it an eco resort, but it's hard to find a comparison to it. But right now we have 25 campsites. We have 2 cabins and another 10 in development. We have 3 yurt sites and 3 more in the works. So it's going to be quite a large sort of resort type area. However, not your typical resort, given the environmental sustainability component to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So talking about that, like, how did you get the planning development for that, and going into a little bit of that, like how does that all work with, because it seems like it's a lot of like, you're putting a lot of different things together onto this one property, right? Which I find really interesting. So how do you sort of combine that into your like business plan, and then also like talking about the planning briefly?
Yeah. So just on the planning side, it's been a challenge, and I've been the primary partner handling all that. So talking with the city, talking with the county, talking with the Water Conservation Authority, and even up to the province on a few topics. that like dealing with all of those different governmental stakeholders has been quite a big challenge. The one thing I will say though is that at all levels of government related to Hammond Hill, everyone has been so supportive. I've just been taken aback by some of the feedback we get from like town planners here in Rockland and the construction managers at the city. Like everyone really believes in what we're doing. So despite the fact that there are some really interesting challenges, and I'm happy to get into those specific to small cabins and off-grid washrooms and all that kind of stuff, everyone is pushing in the same direction. So everything has been figure outable, but it has been a huge challenge on the planning side. But we got there with the support from all levels of government. We got the site plan approval and all that. So we're off to the races. And actually, what we've developed so far on Hammond Hill is only about 7 acres of the 62 acres. So lots more to come. The hard part's over, getting it all done and that kind of thing, and opened officially to the public. So yeah, on the planning side, it's been quite a big challenge, and the primary reason for that is just because no one's done this type of project before in this area. And there's no rule book for these types of things. Like for instance, we have compostable toilets for our washrooms, but the requirements are for gray water pits for each washroom, even though it's a compostable toilet. And gray water pits are hugely costly and require engineering. But if we wanted to do an outhouse, like just dig a hole in the ground, we'd be okay. But that's not what we're about. We don't want to do that. That's not really environmentally conscious. So there's been a lot of weird things like that, also with the building code and the small cabins that we've developed, but we've overcome all of them so far. And part of that is just everyone being on our side and really wanting this project to get off the ground.
Yeah, and that must be really great, right? Like when it's a lot better to have like the city with you instead of being like having a lot of people against you with a project or something.
Yeah. Well,
But
yeah, like being a real estate. Sorry, Max. Just again, another shout
no,
out
no.
to the city. Being a real estate developer, it's usually you're the one pushing and asking questions, and it's not really. It doesn't have to be confrontational, but there's a lot of the times the relationship between zoning officials and city planners and developers can be confrontational. This was the complete opposite. It's as soon as we had our first meeting, it was, yes, we want this in our backyard. The city's being proactive with us. Getting emails from town planners saying, "Hey, have you thought about this?" It's like I'm just floored by like I've never gotten an email from a city official like being proactive that way, and it's been really awesome.
Yeah, that must be amazing. And speaking about this, if like like you were saying, it hasn't been done in this area, or in Ontario maybe. What made you want to take on this type of project, right? Like as you're talking about, like it sounds like there's a lot of innovation, like that you're having to do with this project. So like, where did this idea come from, and why did you want to, go to develop this type of property?
Yeah, that's a long story. I'll try and keep it short. But so the builder partner on that project is a partner on some other projects. I was an investor in the Broken Stick Brewing Company, which is co-owned by a couple of those partners, as well as the golf course owner, Len. The conversation, I got to know Len through the investment in the brewery, and Aaron, who's the building partner and also the co-owner of the brewery. We all got together and started talking about real estate. And Len had this 62 acres that was just woodland. He used to get sand for the golf course from up there. So it really was just a piece of land collecting. He's paying taxes on it. So he was always interested in doing something with that land, although he wasn't exactly sure what. So conversation started pretty early on around, being a real estate developer. It's like, okay, what would you do with this land? So looking at, traditional type development, condos, think like golf course condos for, retirees. So that's the path we went down, and we looked at the cost of developing that and bringing municipal services and all that kind of stuff. And finally, I had a chat with my coach, and he was saying to me, just, give your head a shake. Just look what you can do with the land. So it was already zoned commercial tourism. Why go through all the headache of getting that rezoned to residential and bringing all the services? Why don't you do something in the tourism side? And I said, that's a great idea. And I hadn't even thought of that. And also Len, the owner of the golf course, is doing some really interesting soil regeneration projects at the golf course, because as we know, golf courses are terrible for the environment. And I think that's something that Len took personally and wanted to change. So he's doing some really interesting stuff with regenerating the soil and doing some composting teas and all that kind of stuff. And being in real estate, both myself and my Hammond Hill partner, Aaron, we're terrible about the environment, and especially the construction industry. There's so much waste, and that's something that never really sat well with me. So yeah, I think the idea with the genesis of Hammond Hill being an off-grid eco resort came from that. And everything else just sort of flowed from there. Originally, we wanted to just do tiny homes that were on solar, and we still plan on doing that. However, we were forced to pivot because of the lockdown and the commercial. We weren't allowed to build anything that was deemed commercial. So we had a crew of 12 really hardworking people up there and eager people. So we're like, well, what can we do? Well, we can build these smaller cabins. We can clear some campsites. We never intended on opening up campsites or yurts. It was just sort of a pivot that we did out of necessity. So it's been sort of an ongoing vision change, just based on what's been going on with the lockdowns. But I'm really happy where it is now, and we're still now we have a whole bunch of different accommodation options where you can come to Hammond Hill 10 times and experience it, have a different experience each time. So I'm really happy that we got to this to the state we're at now.
Oh, awesome, awesome. And so, like you were saying, you've only developed like 7 to 8 acres of it. What's sort of in the projection for the rest of, because you used to, the total is 62 acres. So what are you guys planning to do with the rest?
Yeah, great question. Well, we're going to build more. We have right now, as I mentioned, we have very small cabins, we have yurts, and we have campsites. So we'll continue to do a couple of those, but we also want to do some tiny homes, and we've already built 3 of them indoors at the golf course. So you can actually go see what we're going to be building up there if you visited the Hammond Golf Course. So we'll be doing those. We'll have 10 of those around one solar array. So we're working with a local solar provider to get power to those, and those will be those will be nestled in the woods, just perched up above the golf course. So they'll have really nice views of the golf course. So we plan on having about 50 of those. We've been talking with some other campgrounds who have done tree houses. So we're looking at doing some of those. We wanted to add tons of common amenities. So like I said, there's a lake that's under construction now, a huge trail system. We're open winter and summer. So we have, this winter, for instance, we're hosting a snowshoe race. We want to do a lot more of that kind of thing, hosting events and weddings and all that. So I think it's just adding different cool venues and new accommodation types that are unique, and they fit sort of like the glamping trend that's going on across North America now. So yeah, just more of the same, but some different stuff as well.
Oh, okay, awesome, awesome. Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. So just talking about the marketing briefly, or into how much detail you want to talk about it. I'm sort of interested, how are you approaching the marketing one for this eco development, and then let's say for your other developments?
Yeah, so I mean, the marketing on the Hammond Hill is very interesting to me, just because it is different. And as soon as anyone hears about it or sees it, it's like their eyes light up. Like they absolutely love it. So it's a real pleasure to get the word out about what we're doing up there. But yeah, on the marketing side, I mean, I was always used to, with my marketing consulting, marketing software. And there's not a whole lot of marketing that goes into the long-term rentals. We do some marketing, but vacancy rates are so low that they fill up so quickly. You don't really have to do any outbound marketing. So Hammond Hill was really my first attempt at local type marketing. So we have a lot of partnerships with different organizations, like the snowmobile organization in Ontario. We're on their map. We're one of two places in the whole area, the 300-kilometer trail that offers accommodations. The other one is Brook Street Hotel. Local partnerships like environmental groups, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, local media. We've done a bunch of interviews with local media, local radio as well. So really just trying to initiate those conversations, tourism boards. It's been a lot of legwork, but now it's starting to compound as the word is getting out. We're getting people coming to us to ask if they can, host events there, or interview us or write a story. We've had quite a few travel bloggers come and stay at the Hill, and document and video and write about their experience. So yeah, there's no real silver bullet around the marketing. We haven't done much on the side of paid ads at the moment. We've done some email marketing. We have a big email list that we've developed over the last couple of months, just based on interest in what's happening at Hammond Hill. So yeah, it's just been a lot of different localized type marketing strategies that really just involve boots on the ground and reaching out to folks.
Okay, awesome. And do you think that's like, as you guys start to develop, is that going to, like, your marketing campaign, do you think it's going to expand, or is it sort of going to stay the same? Like, do you have any thoughts about that with like the expansion of like the new developments that you're going to be putting in there?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about you mentioned it before, Max, that we've only done 7 or 8 acres of the 62. So as we add new things now, each individual addition can be a marketing piece. So for instance, one of our cabins is the current cabins that we've developed are we're calling them pioneer shacks, and our designer Adele is a phenomenal artist and creative, and she created the vision of these cabins based on specific time periods in Canadian history. So for instance, the newest one is called the Louisburg, which is based on that time period. So the design has that feel to it, and the interior is decorated to that specific time period as well. So those things are really easy to market, and they're super cool as well. Yeah, as we add more of those, it becomes very easy to market, because it's like, okay, now we're adding the saloon from the gold rush, and it's something that's very shareable on social media. So I think it's going to be around creating those shareable type accommodation types, and also enabling people when they're at Hammond Hill to document and share on social media their experiences at Hammond Hill. So we have, for instance, we have a couple forest doors that are quote unquote selfie moments, where it encourages people to take photos and share it on social media, and just share the educational aspect of Hammond Hill as well, because that's important. That's really important to us as well. So yeah, I don't know if that really answered your question, but yeah, as we're adding more and more things to the project, it just becomes a shareable moment.
Yeah, no, like 100% on that. Like, some of those things that you're talking about is like, just as you develop, like, having those shareable moments, I think is going to be so beneficial, right, to bringing more social media traffic, right? Because I mean, it sort of seems like it's going to turn into one of those things where, people, like, as you bring in more people, it seems the people that are going to go there are going to want to post about going there, right? Because it's a nice place. So just them having, posting, your Instagram, or let's say making a TikTok about it or something like that, is going to just in itself generate more marketing for you, right? So yeah, like, focusing on those shareable moments, I think is going to be really interesting.
We're also really lucky too, Max, because we have sort of like a big brother and sister on site. So we have the golf course and the restaurant and the brewery
Mhm.
that are all sort of like sister companies. So all of the traffic that goes to the restaurant and the brewery and the members at the golf course, we're able to get in front of them, and they've all been super supportive. And a lot of our traffic to date has been from those business partnerships, which was a big check in the box for me before I even got involved in Hammond Hill, was that we have are already established businesses on site to create that destination type experience where, yeah, there's stuff to do at Hammond Hill, but you can also get a golf package. You can also get, a really nice meal at the restaurant with, the cordon bleu certified chef that's there, Nick. It's the food's phenomenal. You can get craft beer from on site. So there's just all of these things that, add to our firepower when we go out and market to, we're not just, a cabin in the woods. There's stuff at Hammond Hill, like the trails and the lake and, volleyball court, but there's also this whole other aspect to the experience that, that just really just puts that message on rocket fuel.
Yeah, 100%. And actually speaking about that a little bit more, around that area, has there been like, I mean, like it can't be too close, but around that area, like most likely, housing prices are probably going to go up, or there's going to be more development, right? Because that's going to be like, as that's such like a tourism area with the golf course, the restaurant, and this, and Hammond Hill. So have you guys been now sort of thinking about like with those partnerships, like maybe building properties or something like townhouses or some type of properties that are close to that area?
I like the way you're thinking, Max. Yeah, so we already had, I mean, I live in Rockland. I guess the closest town to Hammond is Rockland. Hammond's a very small community. It's very small. So yeah, the biggest and closest town about 5 minutes away is Rockland. I think the population here is about 20,000. We were already doing some development in the city. So we actually have 4 ongoing projects, long-term multifamily real estate development projects in Rockland. Yeah, I mean, just to go back to your point on the prices, actually the prices in the secondary and tertiary markets have actually outperformed the city center over the last 12 to 24 months. For the most part, there are exceptions to that. But if you look at price increases in a place like Rockland or Russell, it's been 20 to 30% year over year, which has just been insane. And part of that is just people moving from the city core out to be able to afford more home because they're working from home a lot more. So that's been an unintended consequence of focusing on these markets, is that we're getting crazy appreciation already in these smaller markets because they're playing catch up to the big city. So yeah, the fact that Hammond Hill is there now, I think just further solidifies our thesis around Rockland specifically, and we're actively looking for more real estate development projects in the area.
Okay. Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. So I know we're coming to the end here. Is there anything else that you want to mention or add? And what like sort of on a leaving note, what type of advice do you have for anybody that wants to get into real estate investing or development?
Yeah, I mean, talk to people who have done it before and talk to multiple people. Nothing happens in isolation. So yeah, don't be afraid to get out there and, go to groups like Oreo, Ottawa Real Estate Investors Organization, or, meetups, or get yourself a coach. That was probably one of the best things I ever did, was get myself a coach, even though I'd been pretty far along in my real estate development success and progress. A couple of years ago, I got a coach, and it was a game changer for me. So really surround yourself with people who are doing what you want to do, right? There's the old adage of you're the average of the 5 people you spend your most of your time with. So surround yourself with people who are doing what you want to do, or where you want to head. And the best investments I've made, the best businesses I've started, have all been partnerships. I'm a team player, and I think finding someone who thinks similarly to you, who's willing to execute, who may have complementary skills to you, is the best thing you can do. So, and I think just leaving on that, we touched on it earlier, Max, when we started out the podcast with my first real estate purchase. We didn't overanalyze it. And I'm not saying be stupid about your investments, but don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. Don't overthink things. Real estate is actually not that complex, and pull the trigger, take action. Get out there and learn and network and pull the trigger, because there's no better time to buy. Well, the best time to buy real estate was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. So just get out there and take action.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's a like a beautiful place to leave off this podcast. Uh, Thank you for coming on the show, Brad. And where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, I mean, you can check out our Hammond Hill website, hammondhill.ca. You can reach me at my email. Our development company is called Blair Capital. So Brad C at blaircapital.ca. Happy to chat with anyone about real estate or entrepreneurship or investing. Just reach out to me directly.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you again for coming on the show, guys. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you very much. I highly recommend that you go check out Brad on LinkedIn. And connect with him. Like he's a great guy. So, yeah, I highly recommend that. And yeah, thank you again for making it all the way to the end. Thanks.